Real YouTubers have opinions. These opinions make people mad, and then they say mean things about them online. This keeps happening to me. It's just my opinion. Please don't be mad at me. Hello. It's your boy, Tier List Maker Man. And today we're going to be talking about something that I think is really interesting. This is just going to be a fun video, but before we start, I want to tell you this is subjective. Don't be mad at me, okay? This video is every weird Pokemon. In my opinion, it's subjective. Every weird Pokemon that has cut the World Championships. And by cut, I mean specifically top 8 worlds or better. So, I'm going to be ranking these Pokemon based on how weird I think they were. Relative to, like, what you'd expect to see at the time. Obviously, it's not going to be perfect. I want you to know this is subjective. If there's a Pokemon that you felt should have been included and I didn't include it, I'm sorry. If there's something on this list that you felt should have been included, or that it was included and you felt shouldn't be, I'm also sorry. It's subjective. It's just my opinion. But this is a cool way of talking about some of the neater Pokemon that have been used at the World Championships. You can zoom in a little bit. Okay. First of all, let's just jump into it. First of all, we had Slowking. Slowking I would put in the weird tier. It's not the most weird Pokemon. It has pretty good base stats, and it like is slow and can have Trick Room, and it has pretty good typing overall. So for that reason, like, I think it makes sense that top cut the World Championships. Like, I can see it, but it is still weird. It's not a Pokemon that it's not an unorthodox Pokemon that I can look at immediately and be like, oh yeah, like that makes sense. Slowking actually cut 2 years back-to-back in 2008 and 2009. Probably served as a bulky Trick Room sweeper. It was on full rain teams both times, so yeah, that makes sense. Next up we have Vaporeon. Vaporeon's going to be in one of these bottom 2 tiers. I think I'll also put Vaporeon in weird. It doesn't have as many, a solid speed control option as Slowking. It has good stats, and it's a bulky water type. It was, again, used on that same rain team, or at least a very similar one. It was used by different people, but the team looks like the same, so, yeah, it was used on a rain team with Ludicolo, Kingdra, Slowking, Lapras, Abomasnow, and Vaporeon in 2009. In 2008, it was just Ludicolo, Kingdra, Vaporeon, and Slowking. So, basically all water types in 2008, and then 5 water types and 1 Abomasnow in 2009. Yeah. So I don't know. It's like it makes sense. I think in some cases that it would top cut, but yeah, definitely not something I would expect. Next up we have Toxicroak. Toxicroak I'm going to put into the what tier. Definitely surprised to see Toxicroak top cut worlds not once but twice, both in 2009 and 2010. It has dry skin, but other than that, like, and Fake Out and Sucker Punch, like, it has a couple things going for it, but I'm still very surprised to see Toxicroak top cut not once but twice, and also to win one of those World Championships. I suppose Toxicroak was used in 2010 because of its dry skin ability, helping versus Kyogre, but it's still a surprising pick for me. Yeah. Next up we have Empoleon. This is going to be our first question marks tier. I just watched this final match, and like, Empoleon did a lot of work, but I'm still very surprised. Yeah, Empoleon, like, definitely not a bad Pokemon, and its typing is unique, which is helpful. However, I'm still surprised to see it top cut and go on to win the World Championships in 2009. Next up, we have Shedinja. I'm putting Shedinja in the lowest tier. Like, Shedinja's a weird Pokemon, but it has a very clear niche, which is, like, in a format before Team Preview, if your opponent didn't know you had Shedinja, it could definitely be a Pokemon that could win you games. And even though, like, it's a weird Pokemon, like, yeah, it makes some sense to me, at least that it could top cut worlds. Next up we have Yanmega. I'm putting Yanmega in question marks tier. Why is Yanmega here? Yanmega top cuts in 2009. It's a fast Pokemon with speed boost, but it's very frail. Yeah, like, it doesn't have much usage. It's very frail. It had Life Orb, Hidden Power, Ice, Bug Buzz, Protect, and probably like Air Slash. Like, it's just an offensive Pokemon. Maybe it makes more sense back in 2009 when things were different, but I'm personally very surprised to see it here. Next up, we have Hippowdon. I'm going to put Hippowdon in one of these 2 tiers. I think I'm going to put Hippowdon in this tier. It's probably about as good as Vaporeon, actually. Yeah, like, Hippowdon has really good physical defense and can be used to set up the sand. However, it's not typically known for being the most offensive Pokemon. The thing about 2009, though, is that it played without, like, it was before there was a timer. So if it was in a timer format, I'd put it up 1 tier. But since it's in a format where there, like, effectively was no game timer, it makes a bit more sense to me that it could be used, because, like, you wouldn't have to, like, if you could 1v1 things, you could win with it. And Earthquake is obviously a pretty good move back in the day, and, like, maybe it's just used as, like, a counter weather Pokemon. So in a format without Tyranitar, I believe, like, I believe why. Wait, it doesn't have Tyranitar, right? Yeah. In a format without Tyranitar, I can see why you would want to use it. So, yeah, that's Hippowdon. Also a good Shedinja counter in that format, that the user also had Shedinja on their team. Hippowdon was on the same team with the Shedinja, which is funny, but yeah. Next up, we have Moltres. Moltres is in one of the top 2 tiers. I'm going to put it in the Toxic Group tier. In what? Very surprising to see Moltres here. It's a fire flying Pokemon with not great, like, resistances. It's, you know, like, weak to rock and water, which are 2 pretty common types. And unlike, you know, Charizard in the current format, who can deal tons of damage, Moltres isn't, like, super offensive. Like, it gets they ran Air Slash and I think Flamethrower. But yeah, I'm definitely surprised to see Moltres here. It's, like, yeah, it's just not typically thought of as a very good Pokemon, so, yeah. Moltres is going in the Toxic tier. It's, like, it has some things going for it, like, its stats aren't terrible, but, yeah, the typing is not great, and the stats, like, are definitely not what they need to be, even though they're not terrible. Lapras is going in the bottom tier. It makes some sense to me that Lapras would be here. It top cut twice, actually, both in 2009 and in 2014. I played 2014, so now we're getting closer to the era where I actually know what Pokemon did. In 2014, Lapras was actually legitimate. It was a good answer to rain teams. You could run it with a Solfest, and it would beat Ludicolo. And sometimes people were in Sheer Cold. I believe this specific Lapras ran Sheer Cold and may have clicked it 1 or 2 times, to say the least. But I'm not... the 2014 one, that is. And yeah, in 2010, I'm not entirely sure, but I guess that, like, the Water Absorb and the typing is pretty good against, like, Kyogre and Groudon and stuff. So, yeah, Lapras makes sense that it's here, but it's still an unorthodox mon. So, yeah. Next up, we have Lugia. I know it's probably surprising to see an Uber Pokemon here, but I've played 2 formats of Lugia, and it wasn't good in either of them. So I'm putting Lugia in the weird tier. I could also put it in, like, the bottom tier, but, yeah, I'm definitely very surprised to see Lugia here. It's, like, in 2016 and 2019, it's, you would almost never use Lugia, although there was one Lugia team that was, like, running around, but for the most part, you'd almost never use Lugia because, like, you only get 2 restrictions on your team, so by using Lugia, you give up something like Xerneas or Groudon or Kyogre or Rayquaza, and, like, the difference in power between those Pokemon and Lugia is significant. So much so that, like, you would almost never use Lugia. In 2019, you got Multiscale, which was pretty valuable. As an ability, but Lugia still wasn't good. Lugia top cut in 2010 before I played, so maybe it had a niche there, and like it was slightly different because you got you got as many restricted Pokemon on your team as you wanted, but you could only bring 2 out of your 4 Pokemon to each battle. So some teams had 3 restricted Pokemon. The Lugia team was one of them. It had Kyogre, Lugia, and Palkia. So, and it actually finished second to Ray. So. Yeah, maybe like that makes sense for why Lugia was included, but for me, I think it's very surprising. Next up, we have Parasect. Parasect is going in the top tier. Parasect is a very famous Pokemon within the VGC community. We used it to get top 8, along with some other weird Pokemon. It was Mewtwo, Abomasnow, Parasect, Dialga, Jumpluff, and Groudon. It was a Trick Room team, as I understand, with I think Boom Mewtwo, Self-Destruct Mewtwo. But yeah, Parasect was used because it's a very slow Pokemon that could Spore and use Rage Powder. Although I don't actually know if Rage Powder... I don't think Rage Powder existed in Gen 4. Did it exist in Gen 4? I'm totally blanking. I didn't play competitively, so I'm not sure. And, like, I just don't know. But nonetheless, it could Spore and have Dry Skin under Trick Room. I feel like it didn't have Rage Powder. I don't know. Yeah, but it was very slow under Trick Room, and since the team was a Trick Room team with, like, yeah, Spore was pretty valuable to stop, like, opposing restricted Pokemon, and with Dry Skin and Kyogre on the team, it benefited from that as well. And, like, yeah, Water Absorb / Dry Skin are good abilities in restricted formats. Next up, we have Jumpluff. I'm going to put Jumpluff in the... So Jumpluff did well in 2 formats. I'm going to put it in the weird format, or in the weird tier, same as Lugia, which is a little weird, but... yeah, Jumpluff top cuts in 2010. It also wins Nationals in 2016. It pairs well with Groudon in a format where, like, your Sunsetter can actually do a lot of damage, like, tons of damage. You can use Jumpluff as a very fast Sleep Powder user to mess opponents up, so I think it makes sense. That a top cut, but it's still a weird Pokemon. Sleep Powder is still not accurate. Infernape, this is an easy bottom tier one. Like, Infernape, it's not the best VGC Pokemon, but it's top cut in 2 restricted formats, 10 and 16. Very fast fake out user, good offensive typing. Like, it's a weird Pokemon, but it definitely is not that surprising that a top cut. Unlike our next Pokemon, Lantern. How did Lantern top cut? It top cuts in 2010. The full team is Lantern, Kyogre. It's a Japanese team. Togekiss, Rotom Cut, in a format where Rotom Cut is still Ghost type, Cresselia, and Groudon. I can't tell you anything about Rotom, or about Lantern. I don't know why it's here. I've never been so confused in my life. If anyone knows about this Lantern, please tell me, because I would really like to know. It finished 6th at the World Championships in 2010. Next up, how are we doing, everybody? We having fun? Next up, we have Dratnia. Giratina, I think I'm going to put in the weird tier as well. No, Giratinia's going in the what tier? Again, I played 2 formats with Giratina. It's never been good. I don't know what it does. I don't really understand the niche that it fills. Like, it's not even great against Kyogre because you can get Ice Beamed. Maybe it was better back in the day when, like, Kyogre wasn't as strong because it didn't have the blue orb, but even still, it's a very surprising Pokemon for me personally to see here. Giratina finished 8th at the World Championships in 2010. Only one World Championship cut to its name. Now we move to 2011, and I'm going to be honest, 2011 was the hardest format for me to deal with because all of the Pokemon were Unova only, so that meant that we saw some Pokemon that we wouldn't see again. Like, but it was not because they were unorthodox at the time, but because, like, the format dictated that they were standard, but they just wouldn't be standard again. So 2011, I feel like I made the most mistakes on. For example, Electros, I'm actually putting it in the lowest tier because I feel kind of bad that I included it. It was pretty good in 2011, even though it doesn't go on to be good in further years. I also left Pokemon like Haxorus off this list, even though Haxorus is a weird Pokemon, but it top cut 3 times in 2011, so I guess it wasn't that weird. I'm also putting Krookodile on the bottom tier. Krookodile is one of the Pokemon from 2011 to top cut more than once. It's actually the only weird Pokemon on this list that top cuts more than once. It top cuts again in 2017. It's an overall solid Pokemon. Like, I probably could have left it off this list, but it's just weird enough that I feel like I can include it. It does get 2 top cuts and 1 World Championship victory, though. So, yeah, Krookodile is just like a bulky attacker. So is Electros, honestly. He would run Flying, Gym Acrobatics, or he could run Special Electros. It's a cool Pokemon, Electros, and Krookodile as well. Like, they both did interesting things. But, yeah, Krookodile could run Choice Scarf to try and beat non-Choice Scarf Terrakion as well, which is interesting. Next up, we have Samurott. Samurott's going in the top tier. I made a video and I put Samurott in the lowest tier of the starter Pokemon, and it actually almost won the World Championships. It finished 3rd when Fuego used it. Yeah, I don't really remember what Samurott did or what it was there for. It was like the story of 2011 to me was kind of bulky attackers. Like, Samurott was a bulky attacker. It had Ice Beam and Grass Knot, and water moves. I don't remember all the moves he ran on it, but yeah, it's a weird Pokemon. Next up, we have Beheeyem. So I'm putting Beheeyem in the highest tier. It actually got top 8 at Worlds as well. To my understanding, the guy almost never brought Beheeyem, maybe once or twice, and I think he added it just because it was the only Ally Switch user at the time. Let's go back to those times. Beheeyem's the only Ally Switch user. Next up, we have Emboar. Emboar, I'm putting in the top tier as well, though I am biased. That's one of my, that's my Pokemon right there. I used Emboar with Lumberry and Flare Blitz to beat Amoonguss, but it's, yeah, not a Pokemon that has ever seen success since. Next up, we have Mienshao. I'm going to put Mienshao in weird. If it had top cut in not 2011, I'd put it higher up. However, like I said, in 2011, things were a little different, and Mienshao was not that unorthodox of a Pokemon, though it was still a little wonky. But then again, all of 2011 was a little wonky, so yeah. Next up, we have Executor, another Pokemon that I got to 2nd place in 2012. Nobody really expected Executor. It was a bulky Pokemon that served well in endgames. With Harvest and Giga Drain, it stuck around for... Or no, it actually had Leaf Storm at this tournament. With Leaf Storm and Power Swap, it could like deal with opponent swaggers. And you could pass your special attack drops to opponents, making them like weaker, and you could take like steal their attack and special attack boosts as well. But in general, the main thing was Harvest. Nobody really expected Executor. It was a very weird pick, and it hasn't seen very much success since. Executor technically got some usage as well before this with Chlorophyll and Sleep Powder, but it was kind of not especially widespread. Next up, we have Mamoswine. I'm putting Mamoswine in the bottom tier. Like, the thing is that Mamoswine's stats it makes sense that it would be good, and with Ice Shard as well. Although Arash's choice to use Mamoswine to win the World Championships, I think is really clever, personally. I thought it was a really good pick against double Genies, since it was immune to Thunder Wave, and it, had really good typing against both Genies. So, or, 2 of the prominent Genies, I should say. Tornadus was used as well. He used Tornadus to win it. But yeah, Mamoswine, it's a bulky Pokemon, but it was used primarily as a fast offensive sweeper here. It was Choice Scarf Mamoswine. I believe Jolly Choice Scarf Mamoswine outspeeds Adamant Choice Scarf Landorus as well. I'm not positive if he was Jolly, but I'm pretty sure. Yeah, and then you can just beat Landorus, which is kind of valuable in that format. So yeah, Mamoswine gets on this list. Next up, we have Rhydon. I'm putting Rhydon in the top tier. You could maybe argue for the what tier as well. But yeah, I think that Rhydon is a really interesting Pokemon. It was used because Thundurus was so prevalent in this format, and so yeah, like the ability to have Lightning Rod. The thing that Rhydon has that Rhyperior doesn't is that Rhydon gets both the bulk increase from the item Eviolite and the ability Lightning Rod, whereas Rhyperior has to choose between both Lightning Rod and Solid Rock, meaning it can only have one of those things. So Rhydon actually finishes top 4 at the World Championships in 2013. It's a very interesting Pokemon. Its attack stat actually isn't bad. I think it's like base 130. I'm actually going to check because I'm curious. Is it base 130? Yeah, it's base 130, whereas Rhyperior is slightly stronger. I think base 140. Yeah, Rhyperior is base 140. However, yeah, Rhydon, so it sacrifices 10 less HP in its item for, you know, comparable bulk. It's a good Pokemon. I think it had Ice Punch, Rock Slide, Protect, and something else. Maybe Superpower, Earthquake, I don't know. But yeah, it was on a really cool team, and it was a Pokemon that we haven't seen much usage from since, so I liked it a lot. I thought it was really interesting. Next up, we have Magmar, who top cuts in 2013. I'm putting Magmar in the what tier? Magmar is a Pokemon I also use, though I am not responsible for this top cut placement. This was Sajin, who gets top 8 with Magmar, and, you know, maybe could have gone further if things have been a little different. Magmar is a very bulky Follow Me user with Flame Body. It's a really good Pokemon, but it was definitely surprising at the time, and it was only available through Pokemon Coliseum or XD, I forget which one. So it was really hard to get. And it was really difficult to go with good IVs as well. Like, yeah, mine didn't have perfect IVs. So, yeah, I'm putting Magmar in the what tier because it was a really smart choice, even though it was unorthodox at the time. But, like, in hindsight, looking back, like, multiple people had the same idea. So, and it was like, yeah, it was pretty obvious looking back as well that it, like, had potential. So that's why it's not top tier. Next one, though, is 100% top tier. We also have Sajin's Marowak. Put this here. Marowak, not a Pokemon that really expected to see much usage, but in response to how prevalent Thunder Wave spam was in that format, Marowak with Lightning Rod, you're noticing a trend, right, with Rhyperior and Marowak. But yeah, Marowak with Lightning Rod was actually able to play a role, redirecting Thunderbolt and Thunder Wave from Thundurus. Thunder. Yeah, but Marowak is super surprising. Like, it's strong, and it's like a good Trick Room Sweeper, but it's lacking a lot of things. So to see it get top 8 at the World Championships is kind of a big deal. Next up, we have Alolan Marowak. I'm putting Alolan Marowak in the lowest tier. It top cut in 2017. Yeah, I mean, it was actually pretty good in 2017, but it's, like, I actually really only included it because regular Marowak was on the list, so I included both formies. But yeah, like, it makes sense that Alolan Marowak would be good. Hits extremely hard, has good typing, and still has access to Lightning Rod. It actually won the World Championships in 2017, so yeah, that's not super surprising. Next up, we have Pachirisu. I kind of don't know where to put Pachirisu because I always knew that Pachirisu was, like, legitimate, like, even before Sajin used it. Like, we had tested it ourselves, Marcus and I, but we didn't think it was, like, you know, worth building around at the time. I want to put Pachirisu in the what tier. You're probably surprised not to see it in the top tier, but, like, yeah, other people had tried and used Pachirisu. Sajin by far did it the best and obviously was rewarded for that. But Pachirisu made sense, and it has decent stats, and yeah, kind of like Magmar, it, like, the use of Follow Me made it legitimate on its own. Keep in mind that both these Pokemon, Magmar and Pachirisu, are both Sajin, so we see he likes Follow Me. I'm also going to add Machamp to this tier, because Machamp is a weird Pokemon. However, it has, like, some unique things going for it. So I feel like I can justify putting it not in the top tier. I don't remember what this Machamp was. I believe it was Scarf, but I wouldn't bet on that. Machamp top cuts in 2014, I think. Where is it? Yeah, it gets 4th in 2014 when Marcus Liu from Germany uses it. I believe it was Choice Scarf Machamp. It's definitely an interesting Pokemon. But yeah, with No Guard and, like, moves like Stone Edge and Dynamic Punch, and I think it had Ice Punch, it was actually a pretty good call at the time. What was a little more surprising to me is Aerodactyl. I feel kind of guilty putting Aerodactyl in the top tier. Yeah, I can't do that. I'm going to put it in the what tier. The reason is that Aerodactyl, when I first saw this, I was like, oh, that's 100% a question mark tier Pokemon. But then I remembered that Sajin in 2014 popularized Aerodactyl Bisharp, which was a very difficult strategy to deal with, at least for me personally, and I think for a lot of other trainers. I think he even won nationals with it, or he did something really big with it. And so for that reason, like, Aerodactyl Bisharp was something you had to respect. So even though it top cut the World Championships and Aerodactyl is a bizarre mon in general, I'm not including it in the top tier because, yeah, Sajin used it at nationals and proved that it was good before Worlds. I cannot say the same about Staraptor, though. Staraptor's going in the top tier. Top or... Yeah, I'll leave it in the top tier. Like, Staraptor top cuts the World Championships in 2014 as well. I believe it was Choice Scarf, but I'm not positive. It was actually used in the same team as Talonflame, so there were 2 flying types. It was a very weird team. This is an Australian player named Dane. I believe this is also the Sheer Cold player that I've mentioned earlier. So, yeah, Staraptor is a weird Pokemon. Yeah, I don't really know what it does. Like, I know that I think at the time it was either Scarf, Brave Bird, Final Gambit, and trying to, like, end U-turn in close combat with Intimidate, or you could do Choice Band Reckless, or you could do Choice Scarf Reckless. I think I actually had to move it down a tier. Like, it had a lot of options, and it had some usage in 2014. Ashton used it in 2014, so yeah. Next up, we have Entei. Entei's going in the bottom tier. I felt kind of bad including Entei on this list, so I'm putting it in the bottom tier for that reason. Sacred Fire is good. Basically, Entei top cuts in 2015. in a format with a ton of Heatran, which is why I thought it was interesting to include it, because, yeah, Heatran was kind of thought to be the superior fire type. Though Entei had some things that it could do. It was base 100, and Sacred Fire is an amazing attack if you can use it consistently, but, yeah, it's still a surprising Pokemon to top cut, though not that surprising because it's Entei and it has a lot going for it. Next up we have Golduck. I'm putting Golduck in the weird tier, although maybe if you didn't play 2017, you'd expect to see it higher. Golduck was a popular part of a strategy called Double Ducks. It was Pelipper Golduck, and it would immediately offer strong offensive pressure, and Golduck would have Watarian Z, and would be able to use Max Ocean, Max Geyser? No, Z, something about Vortex? Hydro Vortex? Is that what it's called? It was able to use Hydro Vortex turn 1 and just put in a ton of offensive pressure, while Pelipper was able to use Tailwind or Brine or Scald or Hurricane or do whatever it wanted. So it was actually a very legitimate strategy back in the day. So that's why it's not higher up. But it's still a weird Pokemon and it still did top cut. Same team as Golduck was Klefki, I think. Let me just double check that so I don't lie. This is 2017 we're in right now. Yeah, it was Sebastian Escalante, Sebas. He was Klefki as well to top cut. Now, Klefki is a good support Pokemon, but it suffers from competition. I think I was very surprised to see Klefki top cut the World Championships. I played a similar team in top 19 for my top 16 play-in. Yeah. So, I don't know. I don't know exactly what Klefki did in this team. It could set screens, it could have Thunder Wave, it could use Sunny Day. I think it was Sunny Day, I'm actually not positive. But yeah, it's a good support Pokemon. Not so weird that I'm like shocked to see it, but definitely still weird. Next up we have Latios. I'm putting Latios in weird. Latios got second in 2018, almost wins. A very close set. It's a good Pokemon, but like you normally would expect Latios to be used more as it used to be back in the day. Latios has more of a supportive role than Latios, but it can still do interesting things. So, yeah, I was surprised to see Latios do so well in 2018. It was definitely a good pick, but and it has like the stats that it's not super surprising that it did well, but it still was a unique and clever pick at the time. So, yeah, definitely a cool mon. I think weird is a fair tier for it. And then last but not least, we have Umbreon, who I'm putting in the top tier. Umbreon almost won the World Championships last year. A really, really smart pick in a format with, you know, so many powerful Pokemon. Umbreon was a really, really smart pick as a bulky Pokemon with like Moonlight. I believe it was like Moonlight, Helping Hand, Snarl, and Foul Play. Though I'm actually blanking, but yeah, it was a good support Pokemon that could almost solo teams on its own, and it was so bulky that, yeah, it was a huge like part of the team that almost won the World Championships. So I thought it was a really cool Pokemon and a really cool pick, and I was definitely surprised to see it up there. So yeah. And that's the final list. You can see the top tiers in Empoleon. I'm not going to read these to you, actually. I'm not going to read these to you. But yeah, we see, like, over the years, there's been some really cool Pokemon that have top 8'd or better the World Championships. And these are just, like, my personal picks. Like, you could look at the list yourselves and, like, see more Pokemon that you are surprised to see. Or we could have looked at the top 16. If we looked at the top 16, we would have seen some wild stuff. I know that because I top 16'd a couple times and I had some wild stuff. So, actually, I guess only 2015 I would have really added anything of value to this list. Yeah. But anyway, yeah. So this is the full list. I think it's interesting. It's funny to me that a couple of these Pokemon top cut twice, like Mamoswine, Crocodile, Marowak, Slowking, Vaporeon, and Toxicroak. But I think most of the other ones, I didn't look super thoroughly, but I think most of these are one-offs for the most part, other than the ones I just named. So, yeah. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know down below if you want to see more content like this. And I think that's it for me. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.